Bom dia.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome, welcome to all of you to the second day of the 8th Global Forum of the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact in Rio de Janeiro. And we have the panel on climate change and governance, local experiences in urban food systems. The inspiration for the organization of this panel was the first Latin American forum of the signatory cities of the Milan Pact carried out in 2019, also held here in Rio de Janeiro. With the event, we had the signature of the Rio Declaration by 12 cities. And the declaration deals with the commitments of Latin American cities for the implementation of urban, sustainable, and inclusive food systems. And it created the Latin American Alliance for the Milan Pact. Therefore, 3 years later, here we are with the objective of strengthening that alliance, promoting the sharing of experiences amongst Brazilian cities. I'd like to thank the municipalities for engaging and also to the focal points who helped us so much in building this proposal. I'd like to thank, namely, Alessandra Mendes from Curitiba, Bernardo Farias from Belo Horizonte, Bruno Beltrame from Porto Alegre, Karina Bege from São Paulo, and Elke Bitar from Rio de Janeiro. I'd like to give the floor now. I'd like to call first all the panel members. Cássio Trujillo, Secretary of Local Governance and Political Coordination of Porto Alegre. Felipe de Jesus, Director of the Department for Food and Nutritional Security Strategies from Curitiba. Mateus Lopes, Project Manager with the Department of Agriculture from the Municipal Secretariat of Economical Development from São Paulo City. Chiara Pereira, Associate Secretary from the Economical Development Department of Belo Horizonte. Ana Maria Pereira, Assistant for Planning and Management with the Subsecretariat of Food Security, Belo Horizonte. Daniel Mancebo, General Coordinator from the Planning Office with the Subsecretariat of Planning and Result Monitoring with the Municipal Secretariat of Economic Planning, City of Rio de Janeiro. And last but not least, Tiago Salles, Executive Coordinator with the Food Safety Department from the Social Service Secretariat, Rio de Janeiro. Welcome to all of you to this panel on climate change and governance. Let's start with the Porto Alegre presentation. Cássio Trujillo, you have the floor. Good morning, everyone. I'm very happy on behalf of the city of Porto Alegre to share this panel with such important cities in this very important topic. For us from Porto Alegre, it's a joy to have our team together here. We have a team that had the presence of Sebastião Melo, our mayor, who participated in the panel yesterday and now is back to our city. But also we have the Institutional Relations Director, Lisboa, and Carol Breda, the Coordinator for Food Security, with the Secretary of Social Development here with us, and Olivia foreign relations, Oscar Pericioli, economic development. So we have a large and very talented staff here with us. Let's talk now about the recent Porto Alegre experiences in the issue of food, urban and not only urban production. Up until 1999, Porto Alegre had a rural area that was extinguished in 1999, and in 2015 it was recreated. So we have the rebirth of this new rural area that was born with the Milan Pact. I was a local representative. I presided the official committee in the local chamber that sanctioned the law. And then we went to the Expo Milan. It was the civil society and the local chamber of legislatures discussing, and there we articulated the implementation of this new rural zone creation with the council in Italy. Porto Alegre was one of the very first Brazilian cities that signed the pact. So the rural zone was created in 2015. It accounts for 8.26% of the territory, 4,000 hectares. In terms of rural area, it's not that much, but in terms of a capital, it's the second largest amongst Brazilian capitals. We're only behind Palmas in the state of Tocantins, which was created in a forest area. So, anyway, we are reviewing our master plan, and we anticipate that this rural area will go up to 6,000 hectares. We have on the border of the municipality of Viamão an area that was not included, and we believe it might be included as a rural zone. This was the approval of the Complementary Law 775. So with this creation of the rural area, we had a positive perspective in terms of being able to have environmental licensing, especially for livestock raising. And there's a law according to which livestock can only be raised in rural areas. So in the primary production, they were not subject to environmental licensing. It was all illegal, and that prevented them from having access to credit and other devices. And here we also have the slide telling you that we went to Expo Milan. Porto Alegre and Belo Horizonte were the first signatory cities of the pact in Brazil. Then in 2017, I was also a legislator at the time, and there was a law sanctioned establishing that the rural area would be recreated and it would be totally agroecological by 2032. Secretary Mauricio from the Environment in Porto Alegre is also part of our group, and he's interacting with this revision of the master plan. The challenge was the transition. The landmark is 2032. That's the target for our production being totally agroecological in the rural area of Porto Alegre. At the time, there was an attempt, already in 2015 actually, of having production being totally agroecological, but of course, without transition, it's impossible. There was a whole articulation with producers, farmers, and producers from Hama, a community production cooperative, and the municipality, and that's the landmark, 15 years time span for transition. In terms of an initiative, this is an area in which considers the Secretary of Education. We have been working with school vegetable gardens, building community school gardens, and 63 of the schools have their own vegetable gardens. We also have the community popular restaurants under the Social Development Secretariat. It serves 4.4 thousand meals a week, an investment of 2.6 million reais a year. Well, This is another initiative that we deem very important. With funds from federal uh, programs, we had the first food purchasing program through a public bid with federal funds. We have a municipal law creating this program, and now we'll be establishing the first public bid for a program for purchasing food with resources from the municipal treasury department. This attribution for the bid, this is under our secretariat, and then distribution will be done by the Secretary of Social Development. In 2022, we saw the migration of primary production attributions in the municipality. They were under the Economic Development Secretariats, and now it's been passed on to our secretariat, which is a political secretariat. It is a political and governance secretariat, as the name says. But we coordinated a working group with the civil society promoting activities in the rural area. According to the decision of Mayor Sebastião Melo, brought these responsibilities for primary production into our secretariat to show the importance given by the mayor to this issue of primary production. With that, we had the Centro Agrícola Demonstrativo opened in 1974, an old structure. It is actually in a neighbor municipality in Viamão. The area is 33 hectares, has 33 hectares. We have the buildings, a preservation area of 19 hectares, and a plantable area of 22 hectares. That's where we have the production of seedlings that we then provide to our agroecological farmers in the region. We're trying to recreate the agricultural monitoring. We had no agricultural production and incentives, and now the municipal government has tractors, machinery, and we want to call on the civil society so that together with the small producers, we can have them use the heavy machinery and get a better use of their properties. A small producer, in order to use to work on 1 hectare, they need an hour of a tractor, but then they only locate for 6 hours. The machinery companies only lend them for 6 hours, so the cost is too heavy for them. So the idea is to recreate the agricultural monitoring with a focus on family farming. The equipment is owned by the municipality, now will be working in a partnership with the small producers. These are some activities we have in the Centro Agrícola Demonstrativo. We have the honey house, which is a project certifying honey producers so as to help them commercialize their product all over the country. It is held under the agricultural center. Also in this agricultural center, we have the storage of organic eggs where we do ovoscopy, classification, labeling, and packaging for commercialization. As is the case all over the country, we also have an agreement with Emater, together with the Centro Agrícola Demonstrativo. They provide technical assistance to all our producers, including those in indigenous and quilombola communities. We also set up a municipal inspection service, the Sim Vegetal, and we have readapted to the federal legislation, and we are now certifying the small agribusinesses that need certification so they can be commercialized safely. The plant-based products as well as the animal-based products. We are now being accredited according to CISB, so these products will be able to be sold all over the country. Ecological street markets. This has been a reality for 33 years. Last Saturday, the oldest ecological street market located in Bonfim closed its 33rd birthday. Every Saturday, we have actually two joint street markets, and the Phi market celebrated its 33rd birthday. We have several others in Porto Alegre. We're trying to increase the number of street markets. This is the Bonfim market, our production of plants, production of seedlings for schools in the community school gardens. Now we're working on the phytotherapy projects and the Farmácia Viva and the urban vegetable garden program. Now we're almost reaching the end. These are the challenges. The rural area of Porto Alegre, with 4,000 hectares, has the difficulty of trying to avoid invasions. The pressure for housing is always a challenge for us. There are some areas that have been or that can be illegally occupied, and we need to be careful, otherwise we'll lose this production asset. We're also going back to the animal health program with vaccination of the livestock. We're also working on renewable energy and water storage because the water crisis is up there knocking at our doors. And transition is the main challenge, of course. And here is a word of caution to you and a provocation to the coordinators of the Milan Pact. We need help in terms of financing for transition. We want transition markets, but everybody who knows about the process knows that going from conventional to organic takes about 2 or 3 years, and the producers start spending more, and they can only get the return on investment after 2 to 3 years. In Porto Alegre, we need the field diagnosis, data raising, and funding so that transition can be done. Otherwise, this work will all be lost. I believe my time is up now. I'd like to thank you all for your attention and my greetings.
We want to thank you, Secretary. We would like to ask a lot of questions, but we don't have enough time, so to move on with the program. The second speaker is from Curitiba Municipality, Felipe Jesus, Director of the Department of Food Security and Food and Nutritional Security Strategies from Curitiba in the state of Paraná, Brazil. Good morning, everyone. It's an honor to be here with you all representing the municipality of Curitiba, the team from our municipal government. Rafael Greco is in Buenos Aires at a meeting of mayors discussing mitigation of climate changes, and we have the commitment to represent our strategies for sustainable food systems in our municipality. In this panel discussion, the proposal is governance, nothing better than to begin with the mayor, where he understood and he's communicating to the collaborators that it's a millenary, 1,000-year-old planting awareness of healthy and sustainable food in the city. Curitiba, our city, is a city originated. Curitiba means the peão is a pine nut that grows there. It was planted by the indigenous peoples as pine nuts, and thanks to this abundant supply of pine nuts and pure water and protein, a number of ethnic groups that came to the area and cultures from various different. Curitiba has more than 30 different ethnic groups, and this variety of cultures is what makes this city interesting and attractive for us to learn more about it. Curitiba in 1986 began the work of organizing the farmers markets, the municipal market, and the productive change of the green belt. Today, Curitiba is starting since 2019. It changed the former supply secretariat. It's a current Food and Nutritional Security Secretariat, expanding our vision with a metropolitan view and attacking the main problems: hunger, waste, and then non-sustainable systems. So Curitiba has 2 million inhabitants today, more than 2 million in the other 29 municipalities in the metropolitan area. It has a very interesting governance system, which is Pro Metropolis. That's the name of it. Pro Metropolis is an organization, a non-profit organization without a legal status, but it's a group of mayors, institutions, and public agents, and joining efforts for positive agendas in the sphere of some strategies for metropolitan development. And one of them is the agro-food working group, the various different divisions in the 29 municipalities. There are 39,000 farmers in the green belt. There are 12 different cooperatives that are part of this initiative. They're part of the context where we have the springs of clean water. Recently, we approved in the city council the guidelines for the metropolitan market, which created legal conditions for partnerships and proposes all the way from support for farm production to consumer, from farmer to consumer, supporting the mayors to work jointly and collaborating in this sense. This is a photograph when we launched a byproduct of this effort amongst the institutions, where the main protagonist is not the deputy governor or the mayor, it's the president of the cooperative, actually. And with the result of this, we were able to move from 7% and the best rate in Curitiba for purchase of family farming for the school meal programs, reaching this year 47% of the school meal program is supplied by the family farming. The green belt has existed for 30 years already. It's connected directly to the farmers in the metropolitan area, where the population exchanges recycled material for real food. The family storehouse, a warehouse, it's a market school for the farmers from the metropolitan area, has existed for 30 years, where they're also selling and marketing these products, the farm produce. In addition to strengthening family farming, they regulate prices of the primary farm products for the city. The popular dining halls or soup kitchens, 50% has to be from farmers from the metropolitan area. And the municipal market of Curitiba has the first area for organics in Brazil. Exclusively organics has an essential role in disseminating food trends and valuing local culture. And here is this provocation. The food of the future is peri-urban and ecosystem services. We need to understand what ecosystem services are. Simply the benefits that nature gives us, and that we need to continue to live in equilibrium and balance. These benefits range all the way from the supply, support, cultural benefits, and regulation. All these benefits, they're directly connected to our well-being, our market transitions, and our way of living in society. And we provoke people with this, all to talk about this. We have to talk about worms, seeds, and bees, because the food cycle, it involves all these issues: soil fertility, environmental assets. It involves valuing genetic resources and especially human beings as the agents which can empower or not and enable these issues. So an intelligent city is one which understands these processes and is able to use nature in its favor, promoting environmental accesses and ecosystem services. And here, by way of example for lines of development, the three main lines of action that we have developed relate to access to food access, urban agriculture, and common metropolitan market. This is a photograph. We've won an award for it. This is one of the vegetable gardens. There are 145 vegetable gardens already, more than 1,300 families connected directly, benefiting more than 10,000 people. And these gardens represent the possibility of having food as a focus of urban planning and resilience, social resilience. Here we can see the bees that are part of this role, because we know the role that bees play in the sustainable food production model. The issue of organic foods and agroecological foods, the relationship between the benefit from bees for plants and plants for bees, vice versa. So it's a playful form, but a real form of making this connection and awakening ecosystems for us to be able to understand the entire cycle and to also cover the fauna and the pollinators and cover water and include them. So we've seen in practice that it raises awareness and changes attitudes through this awareness raising. This is a drawing and a schematic in Curitiba, which we're building a city where with renewable energy, composting and green verandas, vegetable gardens and orchards. This is a mandarine bee. This has a resin here from bee pollen from the Araucaria pine tree. The metropolitan Mandurituba, because of this bee. But Brazil now has 300 of the 400 species in the world. So it's up to us to value this treasury of biodiversity and connect this to our action. And from this perspective, within these ideas and this proposal, there emerges a demand, the first urban demand in Brazil, which for urban farm to promote and disseminate practices and technologies with this urban farm to replicate not only in urban agriculture and households, but also amongst farmers themselves. Today, we have startups allocated in the urban farm with technologies which are being, one of them has just received an award. It was approved as a short list in orb habitat for composting, automatic irrigation, understanding the need for effective process of irrigation in agriculture, so we can see that the city can produce technology for the countryside and respond to the challenges. This is an aerial view, a bird's eye view, in the Milan Pact acknowledged this, but we are also moving towards a second urban farm with a rainfall, solar energy, food bank, school kitchen, different crops, native bees, the orchard, the Cajuru market in that yellow building you can see in the background is a center for distribution for the family farm produce, which I commented at the beginning, which has the role of price regulation. It's serving 350,000 families in Curitiba. They're served by this warehouse. These are some bird's eye views by way of curiosity. You're all invited to visit us. And this is a spoiler. We're working on this project here. It is an urban farm inside a park to demonstrate that it is possible to ally conservation and production, ally technology and community development, and to be able to indeed replicate models for sustainable production involving grafted Araucaria pine trees, agroforestry techniques for new varieties, new crop varieties, and pasture, post-harvest, and added value, processing these products to be a school, not just for farm production, but also for training consumers in this space. It's going to have a community kitchen In a school, this is a bird's eye view, so renewable energy, a strong connection to energy is separate from the municipality itself. The headquarters uses solar energy itself, so it's the Kashimba in the city that is committed to plant 100,000 fruit trees per year, so there's several things happening. This is a photograph of the mayor with native bees with no stingers, and that's a culture we call the honey gardens, and the schools for food security. We believe that to combat waste and hunger is a priority, but it's not the end of the road. And we need to work on financial education, training for emancipation to generate work, income, and this is our focus for our work through the meal table with solidarity. This is a class of people. They were homeless people who now have a trade and work through gastronomic and cooking skills. These are former homeless people. This is the mayor giving people their certificate, people in extreme financial vulnerability. They're employed. Now the guy with the ski cap on was just employed last week and got a new job. So the solidarity table is served. Hunger is in a hurry. There are more than 100 volunteers involved, more than 800,000 meals served free of cost, more than 300 tons which did not go to garbage. They became meals. So to fight hunger is the first step in the production and social inclusion. And this is a combined effort which represents love, dignity, and unity that orients our secretary and our mayor. This is a playful map. It's similar to the idea of São Paulo, where you connect the dots. So you connect the dots. You know, the pollinization radius for each beehive. There are almost 200 beehives spread around each radius for pollination. We have vegetable gardens, orchards, and we can develop rationality, environmental rationality, and food rationality inside the city, where everyone can do their part in their backyards, on their sidewalks, and their bike paths, and everything else. So this video, if we can turn the audio on, please, and we have English subtitles. It's a short video. Okay, I want to thank you for the opportunity, and my time is up. Please visit Curitiba. We'll be there with open arms to welcome you, to strengthen the cooperation with partner cities, and other cities should join this effort. We believe that food security and sustainable food systems are the strength and tool for transformation of our planet and our cities. So this is our expression of gratitude to all of you for sharing in this endeavor. Thank you very much, Felipe. I will definitely visit Curitiba. I want to visit this project close up. Our next speaker is Mateus Lopes. Mateus Lopes is the projects manager for the Agriculture Division of the Municipal Secretariat of Economic Development and Labor from the São Paulo municipality. So Mateo, you have the floor. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Sorry, said good afternoon. Corrects himself. Good morning. To talk about the city of São Paulo is a challenge again. To begin by talking about how the city of São Paulo is concerned over the issue of climate change and urban food systems, and this the first moment of this process. The first thing that we should need to say here is that these systems, they are part of the strategic agenda of the municipality. This is important in the master plan and the pluriannual plan, which sets the budget. The master plan includes a territorial vision, and it's extremely important because we're talking about transportation, the rural zone, reestablishment of the rural zone, and as in Porto Alegre, in a climate plan, and for meeting the sustainable development goals, and have the strategic plans, but also the thematic plans, where all of these concerns appear in a cross-cutting way in agroecology and sustainable rural development plan, a plan for food and nutritional security, economic development, arborization, solid waste, and the Atlantic forest, environmental services areas, health and transportation. So it's a cross-cutting effort with the committee by the City of São Paulo, the Secretariat of Health and Social Assistance, International Relations. We're all here. So a brief overview of the systems, how they're part of our prioritization. The first target is to include people in income transfers and nutritional support. 61, to organize 400 urban vegetable gardens. 64, to reach 50% of the area of the city of São Paulo with a plant cover. And the last target is also related to reducing waste, food waste. The climate action plan, it creates strategies for us to work on with climate action in mitigation, adaptation, how we're going to work on the social and environmental components and economic components. And it's important for us to be able to stimulate green jobs and the green economy to generate work and income along this line in the 2030 agenda, highlighting SDG 2, which represents this event here to eliminate hunger, but also municipal concern to increase agricultural productivity and adoption, sustainable practices, and organic and agroecological farming and agriculture. From governance, we have an executive secretariat for climate change directly connected to the mayor's office to work with climate changes. It's a strategic secretariat to work on themes that are somewhat more complex, and transportation, solid waste. It's sometimes occupy a major portion of the discussion of climate changes. But for urban food systems, we have a new governance, which I am part of, which is the combination of food security with agriculture, which I think represents a little bit of the motto of this sense, to end hunger, developing sustainable food systems which preserve the environment. So we are quite focused on this key. So São Paulo has a rural zone which represents 20% of the city's territory. Few people know that. We have important work in the city of São Paulo to present to people that these rural zone exists in the Cantareira mountain range, but below the downstream to the reservoirs. 2 reservoirs supply 5 million people. So the region has special concern with environmental conservation because the municipality produces water. Sustainable farming systems are important for the quality of the region's water. The city of São Paulo has 48.5% of the territory with plant cover, and half of this is in the rural zone. So the rural zone is extremely important for that purpose. And our peri-urban areas, as people from Porto Alegre are talking about this, where we have the highest rates of social vulnerability, where we confront a lot of issues, we face a lot of issues, housing demand and housing pressure for occupying idle areas, and we connect the dots project in agricultural division, promoting agriculture as a strategy for development, territorial development to consolidate the territory. So we made an effort to map all these initiatives which comprise the food and agriculture chain, 1,060 initiatives in agriculture in a multifunctional role, agriculture which produces foods. It has always had a role for environmental sustainability, environmental education, but also it is an important activity to generate employment and income and occupy the territory. As I said, from the point of view of the markets, we mapped which initiatives are distributing, selling, marketing fresh farm organic produce. So we mapped together with the farmers in the city of São Paulo who are their commercial partners to make clear where I can produce local produce, where the farmers markets are located. 1,991 initiatives street markets. Some of them are organic markets as well, but the partnership with IDEC, which is a Consumer Defense Institute, we provide a database of fair marketing of organic food produce to shed and show where people can access fresh and healthy farm produce. And we also promote rural tourism as a generation for income generating activity for sustainability of these places, and promoting tourism in the farm properties, adventure tourism, and gastronomic experiences and adventures, and all the initiatives which work with agriculture and food in the cities. 161 initiatives acknowledge working together and strengthening these initiatives. So we our point of departure and the legacy from Connect the Dots was this project funded by the Bloomberg Foundation in Sao Paulo to look at public policy through the players and the stakeholders in the city. We have a network of 2,410 initiatives in Sao Paulo, based on which we working together with them to find effective solutions based on a decentralized strategy as well, and prioritizing people that need the most first. All of these points were these dots, open code. It's an open code program here, software. Sharing this with the municipalities. It's interesting for the cities to have called a more rural São Paulo with seals to map these places. It has this objective of having people learn more about the rural areas, to find the organic markets, to purchase local products, and to discover rural tourism. Each place, these 2,461 have a seal and a sign. It's acknowledge and recognition, and the sign is a port of entry for public policies. They acknowledge that they exist, and now we're coming, and the work is well acknowledged by them. Agriculture in the city of São Paulo, and these 1,061 dots were productive areas, which had the main focus is in the work and generation of income and employment in the census surveys, which is a family management predominantly, family farming. We have the community vegetable gardens in public areas, in environmental engagement, in community engagement and education. The vegetable gardens in community areas in social assistance, which play an important role. They complement the work that they do. And we have 2 Guarani indigenous villages, which is a kind of ancestral agriculture which we work with as well. So our work is to work in networking in this food chain, in agriculture and food chain, and the circular economy, consolidation and expansion of urban and rural agriculture. We can see that we have these 2 vectors which are extremely important to strengthen what already exists, but to create the conditions of the city for this agriculture to expand and amplify. We have an economic discussion, which is important, because if we create the conditions for it to exist, we're able to have it expand and amplify in our work in the municipalities to create these conditions with food security and adaptation to climate changes. And we're going to cover this in the activities that we have been developing in this sense, in this direction. So the line of entry, which we think is indispensable, is technical assistance and rural extension. From 2018 to 2022, there were more than 4,000 field visits, and we focus heavily on serving the agricultural places to understand their work. Today, we do a triage with the areas, so we need to look at public policy, well-structured, like social assistance. You have a triage these places with agriculture, which are their dreams and difficulties, what kind of programs and services that they can access from the municipality. We have 3 different ecological agricultural houses, which are as equipment. We want to turn them into urban farms as well. 10 field technicians, and our target is to reach 400 different agricultural units or farm units. So we have an important front in adopting sustainable technologies, increasing productivity, because we believe that technology is extremely important, especially for farmers, family farmers in the rural area who have larger production volumes. But in the urban area as well, we were able to increase by 50% the number of organic farmers, and discovered as well that we need to advance the technological side to convert the non-converts. We launched the first demonstration units of liquid bio input. So it's a great work, because the conventional inputs and chemical inputs. Farmers use them because that's their only solution that they have. So we provide free of cost this. It is a path for transition, and it's extremely important for us to be able to solve objectively the problems which appear there in production, farm production, and to demonstrate that agroecology and organic production is feasible for their production. And also, we are working with the dissemination of technologies that are adapted to urban agriculture and protected crops and climate change adaptation in conversations with farmers. It's already a reality. So we also have an agroecological patrol, which is indispensable because rural farmers without credits can't purchase their own tractors, and they wouldn't even need one because the amount of demand they have in the patrol for urban agriculture. You have the mini tractors, these small tractors that can work to produce and hoe and so forth. A lot of people are discouraged because it's hard work. And the work operation program in agriculture is one of the main activities which we are going to have in promoting urban and peri-urban agriculture, which the municipality has this program for employability and training with scholarships, and we're going to give them 200 scholarships for the people to work in the urban vegetable gardens. This is going to support people for these vegetable gardens from no longer be voluntary and be community efforts. You can have people that are actually working there and to make their living, and always with people in social vulnerability, and to help to structure urban and peri-urban agriculture and advancing in the allocation of unused land or idle land for urban agriculture in partnerships with concessions of right-of-way and furnishing water, tractors, and public lands. This is motivation for all the municipalities. All of this is recorded in a system for technical assistance, which we developed with open code. This is important for us to work with the data. And we are resuming work with greenhouse schools or engagement of and training for citizens in general to be engaged in urban agriculture, but to produce seedlings and saplings for agriculture. We have a huge effort in accessing institutional markets and school meals. With this connection, this link, we have a municipal policy for subsidies to purchase local farm produce, and also there's a target to reach in organic meals in the school meal program by 2026, 100%. We haven't reached this target, but we're making a huge effort in this direction. I think this is a good source of thought. Banning pesticides in urban areas, talking about a law which 100% of the school meal program, the law itself doesn't solve the issue. We had to approve the law and to be able to enforce the law as well, make a huge effort in that direction with an effort in school tourism, especially for the public schools. This is extremely possible. It's a way of having kids learn about the rural area, and for additional income for the farmers. We're launching a bidding process for environmental services, which are the environmental fines. This is part of the master plan, so it's very interesting because the money from the environmental fines, 10% of it will become subsidies for the farmers, stimulating agroecological transition. It's a way for the municipal fund to pay for this. These are 35 different contracts to be signed in 2022 by the end of the year to conclude the program. The food bank and food waste program is in the Milan Pact that was acknowledged 2 years ago. More than 9,000 tons of food were donated. So the food bank, which receives these foods and fighting waste as well, more than 1.6 million people were benefited in the reference centers in food and nutritional security. The people from Curitiba with nutrition courses, training kitchens, and the composting yards, which are initiatives by in urban cleaning to take the farmers market waste to combine with the pruning from the parks and to do composting and distribute the compost to the farmers. And today we also work in the South Zone with the distribution in partnerships. So we have the coffee grounds waste, which are distributed to the farmers. And we can see that's an opportunity as well, which is interesting for the cities to understand what these waste forms of waste are that can be used in agriculture in partnership, public-private partnerships, and we benefit them and give the farmers in a subsidized fashion these input. And we believe that this is an important step for this transition. And with this work, the municipality is also seeking being a reference in sustainable food systems in these three keys: production, inclusion, food security, and environmental sustainability. So thank you very much for your attention and for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Mateus. It is so interesting to see the convergence between governance and planning comparing Rio and São Paulo. Danielle will talk some more about this in the afternoon. You'll see how these two municipalities converge. Now we'll go to the municipality of Belo Horizonte. We'll have two speakers. The first to speak will be Secretary Chiara Sales Pereira, Associate Secretary of Economic Development from Belo Horizonte. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Repeating once again what has been said and my contribution yesterday, seeing such sound public policies, as is the case in Curitiba, Porto Alegre, São Paulo cities, is the show of the grand role of the Milan Pact. So my address now will focus on the challenge of multi-sectoriality and the convergence amongst different agendas, the guidelines from the global agenda, and the demands of our civil society, and how this can guide towards the assertiveness of public policies. And the second provocation is the sustainability of it all. In face of that, the major challenge of the municipality of Belo Horizonte today is to set up the conditions so that we can comply with this new way of living, something which is knocking at our door. If we reflect upon it, 50 years ago, when we had the first conference to discuss climate change in Stockholm, that was the first time in which all authorities sat down round the table to rethink the relationship man-nature. So that agenda was looking into the need for the future, but did not talk about preservation or peaceful coexistence between human beings and nature. It only said that at that point in time, there was a development model that was very progressive, substituting trees for asphalt instead of gardens having buildings. And then there is a concern. A few years later, with the Brundtland report in '87, there was the inclusion of the concept of sustainability and the action of development, raising the concern that development was important, economic growth was important, industrialization and urbanization were all important. However, we needed to think about a sustainable way in the terms of social equity and climate justice to equate for all that. This rationale in 2003 posed some actions that would mediate public policies in regard to society and the environment. But they were not enough. More urgent needs came up and were prioritized in the agenda. That was clear in 2015 with the Paris Agreement. But today, our discussion reveals to us that food security and all discussions behind it put in face of us the need for a new way of living. This is what the SDGs established, and that's what the Paris Agreement established back then in 2015. So if we say that in cities we have 80% of the food consumption in the world, well, great. Then it's in the city that we have the large platform to change eating patterns. That's why we need a well disciplined public policy, well directed, well structured. Because, well, if we reflect upon this and if we pay attention to all these discussions, we would have never imagined that this time would have come. Food security teaches us that coexistence, the urbanized territory, man, human beings, works, buildings, and nature may coexist. However, my concern, and I'd like to share it with you, this is not a simple thing. In Belo Horizonte today, we're faced with something which is a huge challenge. How can we sustain it all? How can we combine that with the urgent need for development? The development that's still in the global south is based on traditional development. We still hear politicians saying we need to attract industries. We need to think about new possibilities of creating jobs. So the challenge is how can we create, in the terms of territory development, an installed structure that will allow us to leverage other arenas, other sectors, so as to enable sustainability of this new way of living. Changing with renewable energy, it's not just in food security. We need to consider urban mobility. We need to discuss this with the existing industries, no matter what the energy alternative is, electrical platform or whatever, wind energy, photovoltaic. And the other issue is in the territory development, equity for occupation. The cities in Brazil are split cities. We have people that are strongly being affected by climate change, and the government cannot provide a solution to that easily. And when you have the strong rains, and Belo Horizonte is subject to that, we all are, all our cities are subject to torrential rains. How can we repair this damage created by urban occupation? So we have too many agendas at the same time. And all these agendas ensure intersectoriality. This is the challenge. In Belo Horizonte, we don't know whether this is going to work, but we have an initiative with a focal point now based on economic development. That's where the international area is. So we are internalizing guidelines coming from external institutions, and then we consider how these guidelines can be transformed into sectorial agendas, creating working groups that would coordinate different sectorial initiatives. This is extremely challenging, but it is a way of solving it. It's not just food security that mitigates climate change, it is the action of every individual, every secretariat in their own silos. They will contribute towards the agenda as a whole, collectively. And now, concluding, my time is almost up. I am here to confirm, and by the way, I always say that cities progressively, little by little, will become more and more important in the discussion of these agendas, much more than the states or the federal agents or the union, because problems are local. The impact is seen locally. And today, our structure, our federative structure, does not allow for the federal government to deal with all the local specificities. So more and more, we need to share and confirm the role of Belo Horizonte in the coordination and leadership of this discussion and launch a new dialogue. Maybe for the next cycle of discussions, the methodology of sectorial coordination is necessary so as to ensure a new type of development that will enable a new way of living. This is what we're talking about at the end of the day. Not going into the philosophy of it, but we need a new way of living. Otherwise, human beings will no longer be able to live on this planet. So, Isabella, you have the floor back. And then my colleague from Belo Horizonte will present our policy for food security. Okay, once again, we have Ana Caetano. She is the assistant in the and nutritional security department in Belo Horizonte. Hello, everyone. I'm going to change a bit the order of my talk, going into what Chiara just mentioned. I want to share with you actually the experience of Belo Horizonte in the food security policy. It is 30 years old already, but before going into the policy itself, there's something brought by Chiara which is super important and which is related to the way in which we think of the policy from the systemic point of view. It addresses civil society. And Belo Horizonte, by the way, is traditionally very strong in social participation. In the constitution of public policies, we have several sector committees and councils that assist the local government in the creation of such policies. We understand that the local government does not occur alone. We need to remember that. Public management is necessary, is essential. You need leaders that are committed. We know that. And our policy shows that, and it is 30 years old, so it shows that we have the political strength. However, that is built through social participation. We're not political strong unless you sit inside a cabinet with technically talented staff, with interested leaders who are away and too distant from the civil society. That is not the case in Belo Horizonte. And in food security, it's the same. We have three tripods, three legs that are very important. We have two councils, one for food security and one for school nutrition. And then there is a strong part on the qualification of and training of public staff. And I need to stress that importance. At the time in which public workers are being attacked, I can tell you that 30 years of politics going through different political cycles, that cannot be done unless you have talented, trained staff that can provide continuity to our policies. And you need to invest on your staff. Food security has that tradition of highly qualified staff. Every 2 years, we hold an international workshop on food security where we bring experts from different areas, national and international experts, so we can share our experiences in terms of what we produce and also in terms of listening to our peers from other locations and discussing common challenges and sharing knowledge. And we do acknowledge as well the importance of academic production. That is essential. We have a very strong relationship with knowledge production and research centers. Based on our own experiences, we are provoking the academia, the universities, so they can produce scientific work considering and addressing urban issues. Also, sharing with them what they have been producing and how their production can help us. So we have a form of researchers now, not in the city council, but actually with a strong relationship with the city council in Belo Horizonte. And we have a lot of room for discussion for extension projects and research related to our topics, because we do understand this is all uh, into a feedback loop. We are strongly related to them. And we know that international cooperation does add value. That's why we are in the committee, the steering committee of the Pact of Milan. We're part of the Barcelona Challenge. That's since 1993. Belo Horizonte is a signatory of the ICLE. 5 minutes for my introduction. You see, I apologize, but this is just to show that we need to be reminded of all that. A leader does not work alone. You need to have a staff behind you. Something else that we should tell you and should be stressed, Mateus and Chiara spoke about this, is planning. This is my area of action, but we should remember that policies need to be strongly rooted locally based on planning. If you're talking about the systemic part of policies, food security involves systems, multi level systems. You have the local, the subnational, and the federal levels. And here I would like to provoke you on this. We have a strong issue, a strong gap in co funding. You need to discuss this. For the next pact, we should have specific sessions to discuss this. I agree with Shiara when she says that more and more the responsibility is being dropped into our hands. It is locally that we discuss this. We understand the challenges of citizenship much more concretely because people live in municipalities, but the city will not be able to do it alone. It's expensive to do politics well. Thinking about it from a multi-level point of view is essential. Also, from the multi-sectoral point of view, and in the case of Belo Horizonte, we know that the landmarks of development are are things that are guiding us. Our multi-year plan has been considering the SDG agenda as a guideline. We have all the goals mapped inside our government plans. Our budgetary planning considers achieving each one of the SDGs. Since 2000, we have the Millennium Observatory, which, after the Millennium Agenda since 2015, includes the SDGs, and it does have an observatory and a panel for indicators that provides the monitoring and follow up for every goal. And we need to think about this. How are we monitoring results? And in the case of food security policies, we know that goal number 2, overcoming hunger and food security and achieving sustainable agriculture. And based on that, we guide our government plan and our budget, trying to focus on that goal. We also understand that we need to institutionalize. A law in itself is not enough, but having a piece of legislation is important. So we're paying attention to this. Formalization of policies. We have a policy for urban agriculture and a decree that is regulating it now. And we're always thinking, what are the tools, the devices that will allow us to enforce the policy, to monitor it, and make it advance? And in my last 5 minutes, I'm going to tell you what our policy is all about. It's born in the concrete, in the challenge of hunger in 1993. Our first, the mayor that thought about this policy for food and nutritional security that started with supply. Ananias, actually, that was the man. He started it in the federal government and then did the same in Belo Horizonte. When he came to be a mayor, we had the challenge of facing hunger. How could we do this? We understood that we needed to do that systemically. And since then, we understood that we needed to take care of the urgent. If you're hungry, you're in a hurry. That's what Betinho used to say. So we provided food baskets as an emergency solution. We also established a policy that has been maintained, a strong one for school meals. Our policy provides 21 million meals a year. We have a team that is very robust with trained nutritionists taking care of the school menu. It considers different school brackets, different age brackets, and it considers the resolution of FNA, resolution number 6, that establishes new criteria regarding nutrition, diet, reduction of sodium and sugar, facing obesity, reduction of ultra processed foods. So the meals are split in accordance with the child's age. That's for children, adolescents, and adults as well, because we have uh, education for all. We have different meals for all age brackets in the school, from children to adults, and they can eat from 1 to 3 meals, 1 to 3 years of age, 3 to 5, and so on. Everything is well balanced. People who are handling the food is also being trained. We believe that those people that are working in the school do not necessarily know how they can handle or should handle food. We have training also regarding food storage, and we are very careful in terms of food sovereignty. We always consider eating habits of different locations. And Belo Horizonte traditionally is a place where people like to eat and like to eat well. So we consider the crop and their eating habits, and we try to articulate produce production and habits. We are a city council. We're a city. If I was here to talk about policies, I could sit here and talk about it for hours. I will give you my website. You can go in, and for each one of the policies, you will have a detailed description. So we have school meals, we have the community restaurants. The Belo Horizonte restaurant, community restaurant, was the first to be created in Brazil. It provides quality meals, nutritionally balanced meals, more than 2 million meals a year. These meals are subsidized. They cost, the most expensive one costs 3 reais. We provide breakfast, lunch, and dinner. For the street population, it is provided for free 7 days a week. And families that are registered in the Cade Único, they can purchase meals for half price. So if the meal costs 3, if you're part of the Cade Único registry, you pay half. You have soup at 1, and I believe breakfast is 75 cents. We understand it's important to maintain those prices. Now we're designing a community kitchen program with the idea of creating kitchens, setting up kitchens in very vulnerable territories, providing free meals in these locations. The first site to be met will provide 800 meals a day, and we should begin in January 2023. We also have professional training aimed at the people at risk, those that are in Asia, the street population, people that are at risk, women that are in situations of violence that need some opportunity for training, professional training. Also, the LGBTQIA plus that are at risk. They're also being served in homes, dedicated homes. They're all target populations for these gastronomy training courses. We train in, we have different gastronomic courses considering our gastronomic tradition, considering the quality of gastronomy that is provided in Belo Horizonte. We have renowned chefs that provide training, but also we consider the challenges posed to this public. Very often they need training on the job market. Sometimes they need social coexistence skills, and after that, they can go through the professional training course. In addition to these courses, we have agroecological paths also, thinking not only about our agroecological farmers. Oh, I need to conclude, I apologize. My time is up. So we need to think about the possibility of having agroecology be a value. They are free courses provided to the population at large so that everybody can learn and be passionate about it and then replicate the knowledge. This is going to be provided as distant courses online, thinking that these are important courses. And also, we'll have extension projects with university, thinking about our farmers and their qualification. And also, we have ecological programs and supply, building markets. We have now 45 production community units in the city, and the idea is to expand those and to have 5 every year. This is part of our multi-year plan. We use public areas. We register them first. We call these people if they're interested in occupying public areas. They will respond. They need to be organized in groups of at least 3 people, preferably those people who are at risk, vulnerable, if they are part of minorities, but they don't have to. That's not a mandate. And those that are selected then will have access to these spaces. They will then be trained by our staff and by the Emater experts. They will receive all the inputs and then they will be followed, monitored, and assisted so they can produce. The production units that have a marketing vocation, we have established urban agricultural fairs for the distribution, and we've been training our farmers so that they can organize themselves so as to provide to restaurants. We want to develop also an app that will facilitate the relationship between large, top level restaurants, and we want to encourage these top level restaurants to acknowledge not only our gastronomy but also our culture as a value. This is a relationship between our gastronomy. So the last minute, I apologize. We also need have production institutional units, 160 schools with production units. We understand this is a very important training area. It helps strengthen the relationship between production and society. We have health units and municipal sites that should understand this production as something that is important. With so there are so many other initiatives. I should suggest that you visit our website, Suzanne, and the portal of the City Council of Belo Horizonte, and then you can get to know more about us. So it's a whole vast new world and very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you indeed, Chada and Anna. Anna, didn't you want to talk about Anna? An inside joke there. Okay, that was great, Anna. Okay, that was great. Anna was asking, can we have someone? You're going to be able to speak, and there are the results. This is off microphone now. Okay, that was great what you shared with us. So what you shared with us was fabulous, Anna. Okay, I'm emphasizing what Shada said. Talk about the challenges in terms of climate changes, and we as public stakeholders and agents, public players, love challenges. It's an additional challenge for us as public stakeholders. And Anna talked about the importance of permanent good practices and the permanence, and they can only be maintained by maintaining a technical team, skilled and permanent technical team. So now we'll have the end. We're going to be hearing from the host from the city of Rio de Janeiro. Daniel Mancego will speak for the Division of Planning under the Undersecretariat of Planning. Danielle, you have 10 minutes. Please stick to your time limit, after whom, as well, when we finish this panel, we'll have Thiago Salles go directly to Thiago already. Thiago Salles presenting again. He's the executive coordinator of the Division of Food Security. You have 10 minutes as well, and you'll be the last speaker in our panel discussion now. Good morning, one and all. It's a huge pleasure as host here from the city of Rio de Janeiro to welcome all of you. I would like to thank here our colleagues from other Brazilian cities who promptly accepted our invitation to share in this panel discussing probably projects, proposals related to this important theme for the cities. I want to thank my colleague Tiago from the Rio municipality and Isabella, who is a staff member in the planning office, who is able to organize this entire event and this panel discussion. And also, I want to thank here the people from International Relations and the team for the organization of the event, who brilliantly have organized this, the Milan Pact in the city of Rio de Janeiro. Okay, great. I'm going to be discussing laughed after so many beautiful experiences from our colleagues here from the other cities. It's a huge responsibility, but it's also a great opportunity for us to be able to tie together some of the major themes that were discussed here. For us, it's extremely important. So we discussed the successful experiences, effective experiences in fighting food insecurity, sustainable agriculture projects. We talked about governance. We talked about aspects related to planning. And my mission here as the coordinator of the planning office in the city of Rio de Janeiro, a structure which is connected directly to the Department of Finance, to have the ambitions of the city and the degree to which the city can contribute to this agenda in the short, medium, and long term, considering our planning governance, considering the way that we act. I see myself in what my colleagues said on this issue of the agenda for the food agenda as an intersector agenda, and that's how we view it in the city of Rio de Janeiro. So we, as the planning office, I'm speaking for the Division of Planning under the Secretariat of Finance. We're a middle-level agency connected to the Secretariat of Social Assistance, for example, who works with us, and together with the Secretariat of Health through health surveillance. There's a team of nutritionists in the Secretary of the Environment and Climate, which includes the leadership in the vegetable gardens in the city, the Secretary of Education, where the leadership is incredible. 1,500 schools in the city of Rio de Janeiro, public municipal schools, which have a program for school meals, which is highly successful and also historically acknowledged as a major reference program in national and international reference on school meals because of its condition of being able to serve nutrition that sometimes is the only source of nutrition for some of these kids, for people, young people and children from our low-income communities in the city of Rio de Janeiro. So I'm here at the hat of a planner, but also with the hat as a several different other hats or secretariats, departments that work very skillfully leading projects related to this theme, which you will be able to see here in a brief overview in some of the targets and actions that we are included in our planning process. So, our planning process, it is, and I saw myself and the person from Sao Paulo, my colleague from Sao Paulo, it's very complex. There are a number of different planning tools that we use. All of us here in this panel are from large cities. We have a number of commitments. One of our commitments, signed commitment, is to neutralize our carbon emissions by 2050. Hence, the importance of climate changes, which are today mandatory. The commitments are mandatory for the major local governments who are large emitters. The cities are large emitters of carbon. So we need to plan how we're going to reduce these carbon emissions and reach carbon neutrality, but with quality, with paradigm shifts, as the person from Belo Horizonte just said, with direction for sustainable development. So we have embraced this challenge to develop a climate agenda for neutral emissions by 2015. We also embrace the challenges of the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, and I always joke saying more than the beautiful things that you're going to see over the course of my presentation of 17 different SDGs, we did a major effort to enter headlong into each of the targets, 169 targets, having these targets be part of the reality of the city of Rio de Janeiro. And we're talking about a global agenda, but in reality, it's made possible at the local agenda. And what is the reality of the city of Rio de Janeiro in this context of 169 targets in the SDGs? So therefore, we have reached the Sustainable Development Plan and Climate Action Plan, which had a number of sources of international support and domestic support, which provided the backing for this project, this proposal, and which include a collective vision, a shared vision of the city by 2050 of objective targets connected directly to the SDGs by 2030. So we have major areas of action. So there are 5 major areas of work in this plan. So we're talking about equality and equity, and for example, food insecurity is very unequal in the territories, speaking in the city of Rio de Janeiro. We're talking about climate changes and resilience. The agricultural areas are important elements for the territory of this city, which is a major area of transition for the green areas, for example, that are preserved areas. So it's extremely important to value these preserved areas, the transition areas, which suffer pressure, heavy pressure, as our colleague from Porto Alegre spoke so elegantly about. And for example, the case of Rio de Janeiro are an alternative for preservation. It's a reality of an element, an important element to support the preservation of major forests here that we have here in the city of Rio de Janeiro, with this huge 3 major massifs and with large forests, urban forests, and the agricultural area ends up being a transition area, which is extremely important in this context. Longevity and also quality of life. So we're talking about healthy food to be able to have a long living population. So we're talking about transformation of food paradigm shift and governance. Here's the theme that feeds all of us here, which links all of us together, which is to strengthen governance in the food systems in the local level. Great. We did this plan with extensive collaboration. We held discussions, regionalized discussions in a number of aspects and with a number of public stakeholders, and we listened to the children and young people in partnership with the municipal school department in the objective of promoting the transformation, the paradigm shift all the way from the basic level of our young people and our children for us to be able to promote healthier food and healthier nutrition, sustainable habits, and we're promoting actually paradigm shift. So I'm going to rush a little bit more because I'm short on time. I have limited time, but what I would like to share with you all here is that our structure, our planning structure, it ranges all the way from the planning process, the grand visions, to the objective targets and measurable targets, monitoring, and budgeting through the 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 enabling legislation and the budget laws and legislation. Moving on to a specific aspect now of food security. I'm not going to discuss here. This material is going to be available to you for everyone who wishes to take a greater interest, so it's totally available here. But this gives us briefly an overview of the plan, the divisions in the plan. You can see here that we have the boxes for the SDGs in a cross-cutting way. The SDG agenda is very cross-cutting in this sense. So in each of these major cross-cutting areas, you can see different boxes. The SDGs related to them, where we have one or some targets in pertaining to the agenda. So we have cooperation, peace, equality and equity, longevity and well-being, wellness. So we discuss an aspect here which you are not going to be able to, we won't be able to go into details here in the fine print here, but when we're talking about longevity and wellness, for example, there is a basis there, a strategy related to sustainable food and nutrition, where we include, for example, that we should double the number of establishments that retail healthy food outlets. And this base, the base of this study is a fantastic study done by Fiocruz, relating and correlating and mapping the food deserts in the city of Rio de Janeiro. So these food deserts, they were the basis for us to be able to stipulate what are the priority areas for this development of promoting new retail food, healthy food outlets. And it could not be otherwise that the major inequality is also reflected in this agenda. When we see the food desert areas in the city of Rio, we can see that they are the peripheral areas, the areas where we already have the largest vulnerabilities, social and also economic vulnerabilities in the city. So once again, this is another challenge for us, another major challenge. We also have the issue of obesity and reduction of the obesity rates in the city of Rio. This is an extremely worrisome situation. People discussed in the opening roundtable yesterday, people discussed this yesterday, so it's highly important for us to be able to discuss this aspect. There are a number of guidelines here and activities and recommendations and targets and forecasts for 10 years for us to also be able to address this issue of obesity. But nevertheless, once again, with an interfederative aspect, it's important to have dialogue with other spheres. Federal, state, and municipal governments oftentimes are the ones who regulate the issues relating to taxes and tariffs and so forth. So we further have the issue of increase in local agricultural production. And it's important to state that Rio de Janeiro, the state of Rio de Janeiro, doesn't have, it's not known because of its agricultural calling, but meanwhile, the city of Rio de Janeiro, inside the state of Rio de Janeiro, is the one that employs the most farmers, people connected to farm production. So this is extremely relevant to understand how the city of Rio de Janeiro leads in terms of employability in the farm industry. So it's important for us to be able to expand this agricultural area, for the agricultural areas to be able to serve as an aspect for transition, an important transition area for preserving the ecosystems in the buffer zones, but also to value them economically, these spaces that are normally very peripheral areas. So we have here a number of other aspects of climate changes and resilience, where we talk about, for example, neutralizing emissions and ecosystem protection. And we have here another point, which is organic waste. This is highly important. One of the main sectors for emitters in the city of Rio de Janeiro is the waste industry, waste recycling industry. So we need to address both waste from pruning and also waste, organic waste in general, which are the largest portion of our waste that goes to the landfill. And to conclude, talking about the aspect of governance, it's important to remember that we need to refound municipal public governance in this aspect. This is the issue of intersectorality, is a fundamental aspect without which we will not be able to move forward adequately with the agenda. and advance the agenda, obviously has to have monitoring and control and oversight of the proposals, projects, and targets for us to be able to have permanent action in employees, career civil servants for training, retraining as well, and continuing education is extremely important for us to be able to produce a permanent process. I'm going to close now because my colleague Tiago, I'll turn the floor over to him. He's going to be discussing the specific project in the city of Rio de Janeiro has led today with regard to food security. I recall, by way of conclusion, that as I mentioned at the beginning, this municipality has a number of other successful initiatives, school meals, and I would imagine that we'll have a panel at the end of the day on this aspect, the school meal programs, the Carioca vegetable gardens, and a number of other successful projects in the city as well known for. I'll turn the floor over to Tiago because I've used part of his time as well. Thank you very much, all of you. Good morning, everyone. I'll go to my topic straight away. I'm afraid of the stopwatch. Everybody's talking, and the stopwatch was ticking, and countdown. Okay, I'm going to try to stick to my 10 minutes. Okay, good morning, one and all. Danielle has already greeted everyone here in the panel and welcomed everybody, so I'll dispense with that. He represented the city, so I'll save time on that point. I have an approach from the Department of Social Assistance in the city of Rio de Janeiro, and this is just to frame the issue. We should always recall why we're here and the reason for our work and dedication. So, unfortunately, 31.1 million Brazilians are still going hungry. During the pandemic, more than half of Brazilian families did not have full access to food. From 2020 to 2022, the number of households with members going hungry took a huge leap from 15 to 23%. There are 14 million new Brazilians in situations of hunger in a little more than a year. And looking at hunger reminds us with each word, with each statistic, with each number, that we should always remember that for each absolute number that we quote represented here in the picture, they represent a life. So more than numbers and statistics, all our work reflects human life. This is a graph of how Brazil has gone back onto the map of hunger. We had succeeded in decreasing hunger in the country from 2013. This is represented clearly there in severe, moderate, and light hunger or food insecurity. This is our situation in 2022, based on which the policy, the municipality, and the social assistance department, that's where it plays in. At the beginning of the new term in our mayor, Eduardo Paes, we created the Department of Food Security, the Food Security Department under the Social Assistance Division. It was treated as a small structure initially. At some points, it was limited to 2 people and a table, literally a table, 2 chairs, and 2 people. So to needs body for the programs to be developed with permanence and quality. In April, there was a regulation of the composition of the chamber, inter-secretariat chamber for the Food Security Council, called Kaizen in Portuguese. In May, we started drafting the first plan. This is in 2021. The first food security plan. We're talking about a city in Rio de Janeiro. And the first food security plan in May 2021. So in June 2022, the municipality created the Network for Food and Nutritional Security Network as part of the national food and nutritional security system with the creation of the two initiatives in the building the network of community soup kitchens in the city, and the other initiative was the meal plan card for that people received. These two initiatives called Prato Feito, a full plate, is literally in June, sorry, March 31, we launched the Prato Feito program, the full plate program. Thus far, there have been 615,000 meals that have been served from March 31 to yesterday. As of yesterday, we updated these figures yesterday. Approximately 371,000 tons of food that have been distributed. 371 tons. The Community Soup Kitchens Network, we plan to implement 55 community soup kitchens spread across the city. We divided this implementation into two stages. In the first stage, we inaugurated 15 units to test the methodology, to test the technology, the social technology with meals, free meals, in a balanced menu. Our nutritionists are here, and the major portion of the team is already here. And they are meals, biodegradable and craft paper. Also, there's a large amount of aluminum. We eliminated a large amount of aluminum. These 15 units, they were distributed across the city, taking into consideration pockets of poverty and extreme vulnerability. There's a map further on there. My God, already, I'm going to have to rush. So a number of meals, 303, 792 meals that were served during this short period from June to October 2022. We have here access to safe and nutritive food and access to these meals. So nutritious food. So respecting their local identity, their territorial reality, serving at least 5 times a week. We have soup kitchens working 7 days a week, but this according to the each local and reality and neighborhood reality. This is the map. It's a map where we cross-analyze our single registry of low-income people that are beneficiaries of the social programs. We have a higher concentration of people that are registered in extreme poverty in dark red, and where soup kitchens are located currently. So we opted to divide these soup kitchens per neighborhoods with higher concentrations of extreme poverty, but also having kitchens in areas where this number was not as large for us to be able to work on prevention. So for us to not reach, for us to not let the situation be exacerbated, and for the technology to be tested in various different territories in the city. So we have completely different realities scattered across Rio, as is the case, for example, in all cities here represented in the panel. So we also needed to have this experience. Photographs of our soup kitchens. The difference in our soup kitchens is because they are implemented in partnership with civil society. So the administration or management is done 100% by the community itself. The government, it provides the subsidies, the resources. We purchase the meals produced by these community soup kitchens, provide the training, technical follow-up with our nutritionists, with our social workers, and all the service itself and management of the soup kitchen is done by the community itself through action that already existed in these communities. So we have job generation, distribution, and heating up the local business establishments because the resources are kept in the communities themselves. Many of these actions already worked sporadically, especially during the pandemic. The activities with community soup kitchens spread all across Brazil during the pandemic. So observing this, the program came to provide backing and sustainability. And it came, I'm looking at them here. I'm not looking at the audience either. I'm looking at my colleagues from the other cities. It came to provide this backing for management for these activities to be able to continue on a permanent basis. We didn't need to invent the wheel at all. The activity already existed there, and it was already happening in these communities, which we needed. It was to provide a minimum amount of technical knowledge for these activities and actions, and financial backing as well for them to continue on a permanent basis. I'm going to rush even more. The Prato Feito card, it's a meal card for informal workers, inspired by the program, workers support program, but it's focused on formal workers under the government. So it created a card for informal workers, garbage pickers, day workers, and manicurists, hairdressers, and a number of informal workers in various different times. The little that they're able to produce during the day is to take home, and they are not able to eat over the course of their work day, or they eat cookies or crackers or some kind of pastry, not a full meal. We did a bidding process where we selected the card company and the food, a subsidized food program where these informal workers can have access to their meals of their own choice in the retail food establishments. The card, 311,247 meals were served via the card. The Prato Feito program, the Social Assistance Division, has its own network for serving people, 26 shelters, 5 nighttime shelters. We have 4 vegetable gardens in the shelters. They serve 4 or 5 meals per day. So this includes 560 meals per month, 680 meals per month, where the population has access to food, an average of 70 tons per month of food served. Okay, this is my email from the Secretariat if anyone has any doubts or questions, since we don't have time for us to have a debate here, a Q&A period, so we'll all answer through this channel here. So thank you very much, and congratulations for your initiatives. And we studied and adapted the methodology of community soup kitchens, which unfortunately it used to be a national policy, and it's been abandoned in more recent years. So we studied a lot to adapt it, and at several different moments, programs and projects from you emerged in our survey and helped to contribute to the work that we are performing today. So I should acknowledge your initiatives because they were extremely useful for us to adapt and replicate. Thank you to all the speakers. We had an extremely enriching panel discussion. It's a pity that we can't continue. I had the difficult task of controlling the time. We don't want to eat up the time for the next session. We need to further strengthen this communication channel for us to establish even closer relations and collaboration. We're a Latin American alliance, actually, at the end of the day, so we need to strengthen these partnerships and to expand them and improve our policy related to the food security. Once again, thank you very much, and we can continue the chat off stage. Great.